Okay.
Oh, crap.
What'd you do?
I was going to share this other document with you.
Oh, okay. And what I've
But
done,
that's okay.
so what I've done here, Angela, is I put the lesson plan reflection guide right here, okay? And what you have written. I've also have the observation form that I still like to use some of the questions on there,
Okay.
okay? But I will fill out as we ask, okay?
Okay.
And so what I'm going to do is during this teacher reflection, we're just going to go through some of these questions, and I know you've already answered some of them. And if there's some that you haven't, I'm just going to, maybe you've thought about them, okay? And then I'll type in what needs to be. So, first of all, did you get a chance to read through the notes that I?
No.
Okay, and that's okay.
Okay, so where were these?
I attached them into this
The old kind of
the old form, okay? And
And you did.
I think
said that to
I
me,
think I
but
sent
I
it to you too. Yeah, it's
That's
okay.
right, sorry.
But I wanted to point out to you that it only took about 4 minutes from the beginning of the class. No, let's see, 2 minutes from the beginning of the class to everyone finding their partners.
Mhm.
So, are you happy with that?
Yeah.
I think I would be. I think
Yeah.
that's pretty good for the first time of doing an interaction, because that
Right.
transition is always the biggest thing to kind of teach them. And then it took them 4 minutes to actually have most groups complete.
Yeah.
So 6 minutes total for an interaction,
Piece.
piece.
Mhm.
And then when you move to the whiteboards,
How long did it take to hand out whiteboards? Did you
not as
keep
long
track
as
of
you
that?
thought. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Okay.
2 minutes.
Yeah. And they were
They were
handing back
prepared.
their old stuff too.
Yeah,
so,
so they were
it's
doing
like,
2 things
Yep.
at the same time.
Yep. So that works.
So
out.
is there any way that you think that you might be able to do something with the whiteboards as they enter the room?
Yeah, they could pick them up on the way in.
Yeah. And that would maybe take away 1 minute, because you would
Right.
still have to have them kind of transition from the
I
cards.
still have to pick up the cards somehow
Yes. Yes.
and move back to their seat. There was
Yeah.
that movement there anyway.
Yeah,
so
they had to move back.
It was
Or, just logistic, maybe having
Usually-
someone go around and collect the envelopes for you, whatever. But you did utilize your time well, because you went to do attendance
Yeah.
while they were doing the
Doing that,
whiteboards. Yeah, so that was good. So you can look through those a little bit later, and I didn't get every comment you wrote down, because sometimes or said that I can't always hear. Yeah. Okay, so I want to start with this teacher reflection, the lesson delivery. How was your delivery of the objective-driven lessons that you planned?
Well, I think the delivery was well. I mean, it was good, but the see now, are you supposed to answer it up there? I answer everything in the bottom.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, I wanted to, yes, I think you're right. You would answer that down below. Okay. So
I mean, maybe that's just the way I've been using that
okay,
form.
okay, so
maybe
that went
that's-
well. Okay, so
I
that
mean,
way you have answered it. Yes, okay. So you said the lesson went well, you liked the mix match activity, it worked well even though the students were unmotivated. I did not see one student
Well, and
not
see,
do
I
it.
was thinking in both my classes.
Yes,
See, in
sure.
6th hour, I
Yes.
have several more pretty unmotivated
Okay,
folks.
okay.
And
They participated.
and they tried to participate.
Great. And I think there was one student when I observed that, I think you mentioned that, it looks like we need a little more practice on this. And maybe he's one of those unmotivated students that hasn't been paying attention,
Right.
but now all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I like your suggestion. Next year I'll probably use the mixed match earlier in the unit also.
Mhm.
And your thinking on that is,
Well, since I didn't have it made this year,
Right.
but now that it's made, I can just use it again
Yes.
right after we do that section.
right after
So
you introduce
we
it.
usually do the graphing in both formats, and then we do the factoring. So after we're done with the graphing, I will do the mix and match, because that
Perfect.
all had to do with that part.
Right. The whiteboard review also went well. I like the conversations that happen naturally between the students as they compared answers. So my question is, on this form, is how are the students practicing academic language? So did you feel that they were using academic language during the mix and match and the whiteboard activity? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And if a group was not using the academic language, what are some prompts or some monitoring actions that you use to help get them on vocabulary words?
I usually talk about when that happens in class. It overall, if there's a, I say, yep, that's the way we say it in everyday language. Now, how do we say it with the good mathematic words?
Okay.
And so I prompt them to go back to that. And if they can't, then I just tell them how to do it.
Sure, sure. You model it for
Right.
them.
I'm
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But I try and talk about everyday language versus academic language. And when they start saying, you know, you take that thing and you put it in the other thing and you make it be this thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's exactly right. Now, what do you
Yes.
really mean? What's the thing and the other thing?
Very good.
Yeah.
So you basically model it again for them. So
Yeah.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you ever have problems or with students who maybe give a short answer and you have to help them elaborate their answer? And
How do you know that?
how do
So
you
I
know
often use, how do you know that?
that? Okay.
And why? Why is it 3? Why did we use 3? Why do you say that? Why do you say yes? Why do you say no? They're just giving a short answer. I just
Okay. Very
ask
good.
them for more.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So now let's go back over to this. What changes would you make? You've already answered that. Very good. And you said the 2 activities were a little too long, you thought, but if had they done the mix match earlier, it would take less time. Then we would have more time for the questions at the end. And I think you're right. You already know that if I practice this, then they know how to do it.
They do that mix and match faster. too.
Very good.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, the students who needed work more along on wanted more work on factoring. So were they verbally giving you cues, or was it through your assessment, formative assessment?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, and when
It's-
I asked them, I asked them the next day, or not the next day. It was the day after. So yesterday, I asked them. So what did you think of the whiteboard activity? Did you like it? Did you like the mix and match?
Okay.
And I got positive responses to that. But they did indicate I needed more work on factoring that I didn't.
So you asked them after the quiz for reflection on what they needed more time on.
Yeah. Well, and just did they like the activity?
Okay.
And was it helpful as a review? Because I asked the same question to a different group about doing a Kahoot as a review.
Oh,
And the one girl was like, that didn't work for me at all. And she did very poorly on the test because there were pieces that she needed review on that then we didn't go deep enough
Sure.
on that because we were playing this game.
Yes.
Such
yes.
a game atmosphere
Yes,
that it's
yes.
not.
And so that just reminds us is how it's good to use different types of
Yep.
interaction pieces and review pieces.
And maybe don't do the Kahoot for the whole time. Or, to give,
Sure.
to
Yes.
make it short enough that you have time to do different types of activities.
Right.
As a review.
Okay. Another thing, when we look at the interaction piece, I felt that you allowed for frequent opportunities for interaction because it was a one-on-one situation. Had they been in pairs of 3 or 4, then not every student would have had a chance to say as much. Okay. And you gave them plenty of time. The groups were random this time. And so you may think about that mix and match activity, how maybe some days you may have to think about their language proficient,
Pair them more
pair them
strategically.
strategic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Just something to think about.
And I do have several in there that,
Mhm.
when given the opportunity, they will clarify in Spanish
It's
with each other.
Okay.
And
it's-
so,
that's
yeah,
great.
that is
So that answers one of my next questions. How do you allow for opportunities for clarification of key concepts in L1? So as long as
and they just do it. Or, it's
they
like,
do it naturally.
right, they do it naturally. Well, and they know that it's okay.
That's what I was just going to say.
'Cause when
the environment is safe,
Yep.
they can do that.
And when I have them choose their seats, I often say, now the one criteria is that if you speak another language, that you should sit next to somebody that
Oh, that's a great way. Yeah.
you can talk to in your language if you want to.
Perfect, yes.
And
do it with appropriate, conversations.
right. Well, and don't sit next to somebody that you're gonna have social conversation with all the time. If that's gonna be an issue, don't sit next to them.
Yeah,
Sit
don't
next to
tempt
somebody
yourself.
that you can talk math to. And if you want to speak in a different language, that you can also speak.
Okay,
But
that's great.
I just say that up front, and then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, it's okay.
And then it gets them thinking that, oh, this teacher is going to allow me to ask a friend for help, and I don't have to say it out loud in front of everybody.
Right.
and that is, you know, makes it a safe environment for them. So, are there any, just because we've just done the MAP scores data review, are there any students in either one of those sections that you've had to make some modifications or adaptations for because of their proficiency levels?
I don't think I've necessarily made any, you know, I don't know, I haven't like changed the assignments for
Okay.
specific kids because of their level. It was interesting to look at those levels, and the kids that are low generally are also low in class.
Yes.
But
Yes.
some of their behaviors, like I'm going to work on the assignment in class, rather than listening to the new lesson that's being presented.
So some of their behavior.
So it's like their behavior is exasperating that issue. And it's
Sure.
like, I know you don't know how to factor, and that's why you didn't do this worksheet, but instead of doing the worksheet now, you should be listening and
Yes.
taking notes,
Yes.
and then you need to come in some other time
So
to
helping
get
them.
help with that. Or, you know, it's like,
Yes.
they're just compounding their own problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know.
And this.
But
and
it
this,
is nice to know, for me to have looked at that and go, oh yeah, those three, oh, well, that confirms what I'm seeing in my class.
Right.
They are low
Right.
here, and that's what I'm seeing. It confirms what I'm seeing.
And someone that's really an outlier, either up or low, you know, you could take a look at some of those strategies that they had in the program. But I think this interaction piece that you've done, mix and match, helps create that time for them to have an adaptation, a supplemental materials for them to practice. You know, one of the things with the mix and match, that if a student's really struggling, is making a copy of those mix and match cards for them, just on paper, not on
Right.
cardstock, and letting them take them home, and they can practice on them.
Well, and I didn't do that with the mix and match, but with the PowerPoint, I put the PowerPoint out
Okay.
on
On
Classroom.
Google Classroom, perfect.
so then they could go through
Yes.
it again, because all the
Yes.
answers were there except for
Yes.
the graphing.
Perfect.
And, you know, so they could look at it and look and do the answer and, you know, whatever.
And
So-
have the answer, yeah. And I like the questions that you asked at the end. What do you need to study most? You know, to
Yeah.
kind of have.
And in reality, we didn't get to.
Oh, you did.
We ran
because
out of time.
You ran out of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again,
something to think
it's
about.
like we
Yeah.
need to either I just need to go a little quicker, you
Yeah.
know, or
I know.
you know, it's just
Well,
part of that is me too. That it's like
Yeah.
okay, not quite so much wait time, a little bit less,
Sure,
you know.
sure. Yes, yes.
And I did better in 6th hour. I speeded things up.
Well, and
Well,
you know
and
why?
they're shorter 6th
because
hour, too.
you taught it once and
You
then
know,
you made
yeah.
modifications
Exactly.
for the next one.
I did
That's
better.
the joy
yeah,
of getting
going,
to teach
okay,
the same thing.
let's
more
keep
than
going
once.
here.
Okay, one of the things Lisa Wymore with our side class wants us to do is to look at some questions when planning or reflecting. And I just picked out a couple of them, and if you think that you have some questions you'd like to reflect on, you can. But I wanted to start with explicit links between past and learning. And how do I connect new concepts to students' past learning? You know, thinking to this lesson, maybe not just the review part, but when you started it, what are some things that you did to help connect to what they had learned previous?
Well, we try to use the same verbiage and
Okay.
methodology for like
Perfect.
factoring.
Okay.
So we're all doing AC method, and we all factor with the box.
Okay, okay,
And I think
okay.
so.
So there they can see the consistency, and you can say,
So when I
remember
say, remember when we did a box? Remember this box that looks like a black square?
Yeah,
They're on. Oh yeah, I do remember that. You know,
Okay.
I don't remember how to use it, but I remember that. You know,
Sure.
so it does connect.
okay,
And
wonderful.
so we do try and do that kind of stuff as a department, and so I have tried to think about that, but
And another one, when I just look at linking to students' background, and I'm thinking also to their, how can just, and if you can't think of it right now, I just want you to ponder on this as, what is it when you're teaching this lesson that you can connect it to something in their life today? What are some examples of how this applies? Because, you know, we always have those students who say, well, what good is this going to do for me? How am I going to use this? So think about that, and maybe when you're...
and that's harder. I
It is
think,
harder.
for a lot of these math concepts, because it's like, well, you apply it in science, but not for another
Okay,
long time. You know, we're learning this down here, and you use it when you get up here in science.
So
we're not there yet to be able to really can make good connections, and for a lot of things.
are there any of those students in a science class right now that are actually using some of those skills? Probably not. That might be next year. Okay?
No.
So anyway,
Probably
just,
not. I
that's
know,
just
yes,
something
but
to
that's-
always be thinking about. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, because of what your activities that you did in this lesson with the mix and match, it really is one of the go-to strategies for vocabulary words and how to enhance theirs. So, how do you consider and use student language proficiency and background prior knowledge when selecting key vocabulary? For example, on this lesson planning guide,
This is
that's
my new
yours.
one.
Okay, sorry. It
Is
says.
it this one?
Yes, there it is. It says here, remember the area where you actually divide out the
words,
yes.
yeah.
So you did put the content words and the process and function words, okay? And
Okay, now what was your question? How do
Yes.
I consider language proficiency?
yeah,
Well,
when you're looking at those words.
in these, I mean, I think most of the words in this section are relatively new, like vertex
Okay.
form and standard form. Those are new words for all the
Okay,
kids.
okay.
Or relatively new.
So
and
they're-
they're not, I don't know. We teach them specifically
Sure.
in this unit, even though they have seen it before in Algebra 1 for sure.
But it absolutely needs to be reviewed again. So
Mhm.
there's still your
Right.
key vocabulary words.
Well, and like in this lesson I'm teaching today, one of the, I didn't bring that
Mhm.
piece of it, but in those words I put things like radical and square root and squaring. I find that kids, they tend to do the right thing. When they're working the question, they square in the appropriate place and they square root in the appropriate place. But they don't verbalize it properly. They don't know the right word for that.
for that function,
process.
for that
Right.
process. Okay.
Yep. And we tend to use, in this section especially, we use radical and square root interchangeably, which is difficult for language kids.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's like, I was thinking about that, I gotta make sure I talk about that today. And that radical and square root are the same. And squaring, being power of 2, is also, squaring is a special word that means power of 2.
Right,
And for language kids, it's better to say power of 2, power of 3, power of 4,
they understand that better.
because then it's consistent.
Is there a way that some of those words, I know you have posters in your rooms,
Mhm.
and you do have some of these, I know these functions and process words up there
Yeah.
about, students creating their own little word wall where some of those similar functions and words could be just up in
Put 'em up
front of
there.
them.
Yeah.
Off to the side, maybe it doesn't have to be in
Right.
front with all your other ones,
Yeah.
but just something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Or for students, that have a sheet that's on, for them, if you have special, students with that L1 difficulty, you could laminate it and say, this is your cross-reference card,
Yeah.
and you can use this.
Mm-hmm.
Just something to think about. Kind of
Right.
like a picture dictionary that you would
Yeah.
use in another class, but it's a math dictionary
Right.
for you. So,
Yep.
okay. Okay, our last question. Within lessons, how do I enhance learning by providing multiple exposure and opportunities to interact with key vocabularies?
Well, especially in this lesson, that happened because
Yes.
they did the mix
Yes.
and match and talked about the vocabulary there, and then we used that same vocabulary in the
Could you
in
see?
the PowerPoint.
Could
Yeah.
you see yourself using short interaction pieces in future lessons that they don't necessarily have to be the mix match all the time
Mhm.
or the whiteboard, but can you see yourself using that
Sure.
and using the go-to strategies book as some other ideas?
I think I
that-
need to plan more specifically for that
Mhm.
in general, because
Yes.
we tend to just
Intentionally,
fall back
yes.
on our old habits, and
Yes.
it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to intentionally plan for pairing the kids
Very
up
good.
and having them talk.
Absolutely.
And actually write it right here. We're gonna do it right here, you know?
Yes. Yes.
'Cause otherwise it tends not to.
It tends not to happen, or it ends up being we ask a question to the whole class and the same 3 students answer the question. And this way it allows all students to answer the question, and maybe only 3 groups share out
Yeah.
for the whole group to hear, but everybody gets an opportunity to practice it. So, okay, do you have any specific questions for me or comments that you would like for me to? So you can kind of see where this interaction, building background, and key vocabulary all just kind of work together
So now, are we supposed to answer these questions
for Lisa.
Lisa?
Just between you and I.
Oh, okay.
Just
So what,
between you and I.
well, aren't we supposed to type something up on
Yes,
the
yes.
reflection thingy though? On
Yes.
the other, on the other thing?
Yes, on the other thing of
Such good vocabulary!
Okay,
Online,
yes.
the Google thing.
So you need to share your lesson plan with her now that
Uh-huh.
you've done your reflection, okay? And then you might
Well, and
even
I was gonna
add,
say, I was gonna
you
put
need to
something
add
in there,
that.
but I
after
didn't quite get it done.
if you get all the when you get
They're
all
graded,
they're
and
graded.
I entered them so I could actually find the mean and the median, because
Oh,
the
perfect.
factoring part was generally,
That's gen-
well, it tended to be either they were bad on the whole thing,
Mhm.
or they were good on the whole thing, or were good on graphing and bad on factoring.
So that tells you there's something fundamentally there. that
Yeah.
you're supposed to- So write your comments down here, what the results were of the assessment. Then you need to just to give her some background, let her know what grade level and everything, and your vocabulary words. But you did.
So
put
this
that
goes
little-
in my reflection journal?
No,
Or this goes
this-
when I send this to her?
when you send it to
Okay,
her.
okay.
Yep. And then go to your reflection journal and answer those questions. And then she already has access to your reflection journal, and
right.
so then you do that. So these questions here are some basic questions you and I are to cover when we plan and when we
All right.
reflect. So, okay, that sounds wonderful. Thank you for your time. Good
How
job.
much, what time is
It is 11:03.
it? Okay.
Homeroom schedule is
23.